Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to Free For All, your source for all things geek. I almost had it. I'm Josh Barnett, one of your hosts.
You suck, Josh.
Alongside that asshole.
Yeah.
Could you be more specific, sir?
Woo! No, pretty much the three of you guys. We're not even doing intros because I'm not on the show, so this is just my solo project.
Three for all.
Long live Three for All.
That's Trey
Logo
Elliott,
change
Evan
coming.
Swafford, and Chuck fucking Nally.
That's my middle name, actually.
How many middle names do you have, Chuck?
20. Enough. Will
Um,
you stop? What are you doing? Stop it.
God, I wanted that to bounce up.
It looked like you were going over top for a while there. Did you
thought
side
about
against it?
Yeah, there's a lot more leeway underneath.
Well, there you go.
As is in life.
That's about as good an intro as could be for our first Gamescast in 2 months.
Yeah.
Let's jump right into the video game news. So we haven't been...
Let's do it, Josh. What?
Three for All.
You literally just take the wind out of my sails, no matter what.
I was trying to help.
Is that how we're
You gotta
talking
get
now?
better sales.
Yeah.
Aha! Continue, sir.
So we haven't really done a lot of news stories since before E3 because we used E3 as our game show for last month. So some of these stories will be a little bit older, but I think they're worth talking about. Such as, did anybody see this fight between Atari and UK website The Register?
No.
No.
It's my favorite video game story of the year. So Atari...
Are they still trying to make that new system thing happen?
This revolves around the Atari box. Before E3, they went out and basically showed a bunch of different developers, or a bunch of different game sites, rather, the Atari box, and they had one of their senior developers there to kind of display it, talk about it. Again, it was supposed to be only in like a prototype type thing, but to get people to generate interest and talk about
Does it
the
still have
product.
the wood finish?
It does, yes. That's not what this is about, though. The Register apparently wrote a scathing article about how nothing worked. They asked a bunch of questions of the developer. They didn't have any sort of answers or anything. And Atari shot back. So,
Clap back.
pretty much, their quote was, let's see.
What a douchey picture they put on this article.
I know, right? Well, no, the Register's a dick website, but it's really funny
Ew.
what they did. Responded
I
to
thought
the
you hadn't
article.
watched Portal.
It's his phone. He's good.
Yeah, it's not my computer.
Oh, okay.
We
What
all-
causes the typos?
So Atari said, we honestly can't explain that article either when speaking to a potential purchaser of their video game console. Our executives sat with the reporter for half an hour, and he wrote that what he wanted to instead of what was discussed with him. Sadly, there are even irresponsible trolls in professional positions, I guess. We clearly said that we were bringing engineering design models to GDC, and a lot of people clearly don't understand what that means. Hunks of plastic, well, yeah, that's how you finalize designs and confirm that you can get the look you want for the finished product. Sad. First of all, it's a dick move to end any quote with sad. The Register, however, said, while we at the Register often take a lighthearted, critical perspective of the news of the day, we take our professional obligations as reporters very seriously. In that capacity, we would like to formally apologize to both Atari and Michael Arst, who was on site, for doing our digging out the recording of the interview, and for following up with that article in which we highlight that Atari is so full of crap that they should be designated a hazardous waste zone. They then posted the entire 30-minute video of the interview in which everything they put in the article was true. And it's my favorite thing I've ever read.
Shit.
It's fucking hilarious.
By the way, did Hugh Lewis ever come out with an album called News of the Day? Because this seems like it would be pretty spot on.
Yeah, I mean, coming to Free For All sometime in 2019.
We'll get him to write that album.
Did
live
his
here on the
representative
show.
ever respond to our tweet?
No.
Did he
Not
vote the
yet.
poll?
He ain't gone dev enough yet.
I don't know. Fresh to death. Oh, speaking of which.
Oh,
we need
shit. You're right.
we need a poll for this week.
We got to look at last week's results.
That's right. God, Josh. Go to the next thing. I'll do it.
At some point, they highlight this is a clip of Atari having no idea about its own
Keep on
controller.
trucking.
Did anyone think this thing was going to be good?
Go Google this.
Yeah, it's really funny. It's on the Register. Just search Atari and the
Atari
Register.
thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you?
I thought it was going to be fine.
Some
for
people
what
thought that it
is.
had a chance, for sure. I mean, Atari has a legacy of good console making, like in the 80s and 70s.
Been a while.
Also, the company, there's two different Ataris that exist now, and
Yeah.
like the companies that own them, like they're not anything having to do with the original
Okay.
Atari company anyway. But yeah, I thought that was really funny. Probably the biggest news story to come out of E3, aside from like, you know, the insane amount of games and
Stuff
all the hype
announced
about
at
Cyberpunk.
E3.
It was the fact that PlayStation kind of sucks.
Did
Sony kind of sucks.
At PR, yeah.
At PR and at policies in general. So I'm a huge PlayStation fan, the biggest one here, I'm sure. But basically all anybody had been able to talk about the few weeks following E3 is the fact that it came to light because of Nintendo
Getting
partnering
Fortnite.
with Epic and getting Fortnite out there, that Sony is preventing people from even using their Epic accounts for Fortnite on other consoles.
Yep.
There had been an error when people tried to use their Fortnite account for Xbox when it first came out.
Yeah, but it was a mistake.
It was, well, no, it wasn't a mistake.
Well, they just didn't know because Switch didn't.
Well, that's what I'm saying. No, so
Yeah.
I'm talking about like if you used your Epic account on PlayStation first and then use it on Xbox, it was the same thing, but it was just a generic error message that
Right.
you would have had to have gone online and researched and everything else. Epic decided to take that out and literally just put in the actual error message now because you use this on the Sony or on the PlayStation 4, you cannot use
Yeah, they're
this on
clearly
other
upset
consoles.
with Sony.
Yeah, and
That's
they
what it
should be.
Yeah.
It's really the most disappointing thing. It's the least consumer friendly move they could have possibly. And they've come out with a couple of different statements that are really shitty.
Yeah, and
About
it's
the
just
whole
the next
thing?
step. This started with Rocket League.
Mm-hmm.
It did start with Rocket League, and like I've gone back and looked, and there's something like 20 or 30 games that I either would have purchased for PlayStation or at least would have purchased outright at all had they
If
had
you could just
crossplay.
play with us, yeah.
And I know that it was unreasonable to expect from the beginning of the generation that anybody would have that, but like Evolve. I probably would have played that a lot longer if it had been on PlayStation than Xbox. I don't like the controller, right? I would have bought Grand Theft Auto when you guys got into it again because I would have been able to play it on that console.
Right.
I now have to buy Red Dead on the console I don't want, so I'm taking money away from what Sony is making. Like, it's really stupid that they have this policy out there, and their responses have been just horrendous, too. Basically, the first one was essentially, well, we have so many people playing on PlayStation, why would you want to play anywhere else? Which really,
Oh, shit.
like,
You
kind
didn't
of,
hear
yeah,
that?
It was
No.
kind of really
Super
fucking shitty.
douchey.
Fuck that noise.
And then the next
Should
one,
this be this week's poll
Yeah.
about Sony?
douchey or super douchey.
Yeah, there you go.
I hate being a part of that, but yeah, it's accurate.
Also, last week's poll, we got 0 votes.
We put up too many polls, probably.
No, it's just that one poll.
So the most
It was tied
recent
for first.
response from them, I'm trying to pull up the exact quote here,
Go on,
but
FFA polls.
I like FFA polls.
Whatever we're doing. it.
FFA polls make sense. The quote for the most recent one, which was about a week and a half ago, was actually, in my opinion, kind of more shitty. Basically, I'm trying to think who was it that said it. Sean Layden, president of CEO Interactive, put out a new quote, basically talking about how they are working towards a solution, and essentially, we're confident that we'll get a solution which will be understood and accepted by our gaming community while at the same time supporting our business.
Yeah, they're not going to give an inch on this, I don't think.
Yeah, basically, yeah, we're hearing it. We're looking at the possibilities. You can imagine the circumstances around that affect a lot more than just one game. I'm confident we'll get to a solution which will be understood and accepted by our community.
So crossplay should just be a thing.
It really should. Like, I don't. I get. So a lot of people are talking about the reason Sony is so gung ho on this is because they don't want people paying for something on one system and using it on their system. So in other words, if you buy the Battle Pass but you pay through the Microsoft Store, Microsoft gets that cut of the money. Sony does not, but then you're using that asset on the Sony console by using your profile. I get that, but that's why you get like exclusives and things that you have to pay through the system.
And you
if
still at
want.
least had to buy the game for Sony as well.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. For Fortnite, a little different. It's the biggest game in the world, but it's free to play. They make
Yeah.
their money through the
but I
battle
mean,
passes. But
there's a lot of
still,
other games that
yeah.
are not free to play.
Rocket League, how much like
You're still
you know,
getting money off of it.
Rocket League itself was purchased on the console, and then also like I've bought 4 or 5 DLC packs. I would like to be able to take that on my Switch, but I can't do that because it's not, even if we're not doing cross-play, cross-platform unification should be a thing that's okay because it's a third-party account.
You
Right.
also just can't really put a number value on the amount
Goodwill?
of the amount of goodwill you get by doing that. I mean, there's something to be said for just making the consumer happy, even if it doesn't turn into like tangible dollars for you.
I
Also,
mean,
Because
how
eventually
did-
it will cost you.
Stuff like that is what eventually leads to your downfall. Like, not downfall, but that's how you end up eventually losing in another
This
generation.
is the first
This
year
was-
of the Xbox One.
well, this was the hubris that Microsoft had last generation. It's
Yep.
the hubris they have now, that Sony has now. Sony actually reached out and apparently wanted to do crossplay last generation, But Microsoft said no, which they had no reason to. Like, they were in #1 position, and it makes sense. Now,
Fans are more
with
aware of it now.
Phil
too.
Spencer, I believe, when he says, and he was on Giant Bomb during E3, and
I just can't see Phil ever making that decision.
he said, like, I know that that's the general consensus that, if we were in #1 position, we wouldn't do it. But, I mean, I'm here to tell you can take my word for it or not, but that's not the case. At this point, the future of games, we've very clearly gone to the fact where multiple companies are working on streaming platforms instead of individual consoles. We have maybe one full generation of consoles left. Like, why not get in now while you can and get the goodwill so that people are thinking of your games in the future as well? Like, it's a very disappointing move that, like, is it's the thing that's bothered me most about this console generation in general.
I want to know how Sony got beat by Nintendo on this. Nintendo still can't work out fucking
because
like,
Nintendo
party chat.
Well, Nintendo
Correct.
will. There are analysts saying that the Switch will be the #1 selling console this year, which is great. That system is seeing a lot of huge success, but Nintendo is being smart in terms of saying, if we have a system that can go anywhere that people are playing, but we know they're using it as their secondary console, partner, right? Like, we should partner because, it's weird that they are recognizing it first, but I think that some of these moves were initially made out of a bit of desperation to make the Switch a more viable platform.
It's smart on their part, but Nintendo, I wouldn't consider beating Sony on the console aspect on a lot of things. So
yeah, well,
good on them.
The fuel,
But
the fuel was
Sony.
added to the fire for sure after Minecraft came out on the Switch with the crossplay functionality, and Microsoft and Nintendo on Twitter were basically sucking each other's dicks. Like, it was hilarious. Did you see any of that stuff?
Yeah, it was funny.
Yeah, it was real funny.
It was smart and it was funny.
Sucking
and
dick, always funny.
It is indeed.
Josh goes to those sites, I hear.
Not
Only on his phone.
Oh.
Not on my computer.
It's a dick website, man.
Nothing but dicks.
But yeah, so it's really shitty, and hopefully something changes, but probably not.
It's not going to.
We can finally talk about this story now because you're no longer affiliated with them. GameStop is potentially going out of business or being bought out.
I think being bought out
Being
is
bought
probably
out
the
is
better term at this point.
The douchiness on the internet was palpable.
So
Yeah,
we
it
haven't
was.
heard
during this.
anything about this
My
in a couple of weeks.
God.
But yeah, GameStop essentially came out and confirmed that there have been buyout talks after a significant decline in profits over the last few years.
Including a lot of people we know, and that might be watching this.
potentially people
Probably.
who used to maybe work for
How
some company that might be involved
do
in the
you
story.
think when you make the comment of like trading in their stocks for like pennies on the dollar, taking shots at GameStop, that you're original? Like, do you really?
Some people clearly do.
A lot of them, most of them, really do think they are the first to make that fucking joke, whereas it was every fucking comment.
And while GameStop is certainly in a bad place, and not to pretty much no one's surprise, like GameStop will eventually
brick and mortar is going away?
Yes,
Yeah, physical media.
for video games, yes.
Yeah, and it'll go the way of Blockbuster eventually. It's just
but it's not even.
it's not there.
It's not. Yeah, it's not close to where Blockbuster was. When it
GameStop
showed
probably
up in
makes
half
it
its
through another
stores.
console generation.
No, it is getting closer, and look, Best Buy just stopped carrying CDs altogether. Like, physical media in general is going away.
But
it's going to be a little
It's
while.
a slow. I mean,
like people are like incredulous when I say
Yeah.
I like GameStop.
Yeah, I have
still
no
shop
problem with
there.
the company. I will eventually. I shop there, but
It's
I
a good
mostly buy
place
digital
for me to go
products.
buy games. Like, it's convenient for me. I like pre-ordering.
Do you
No
stop
one's
there?
making me doing it. I do stop there. I stop in every now and then.
For games.
For games. Yeah.
Damn it.
like Spider-Man is a good example of a game that has no multiplayer. I will purchase it for $60 at GameStop. I will beat the living fuck out of it for about 2 months.
Don't play it.
Exactly, and then I'll trade it in.
Yeah, dick website.
And I'll get $20 or so off the next game that I buy.
Yeah, see,
I'll
for me,
Red
I
Dead
just
or whatever.
enjoy having it
So what?
digitally.
You don't trade that in?
Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't trade a lot of games. I enjoy keeping them, but I get your point of view. I like doing it if I buy a
kept
game and it
Overwatch.
sucks.
I kept Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah,
Like,
what's games
I'm
you go
not
back
gonna
to?
Keep
Actually,
in,
no, I'm more surprised about the subject matter than
I mean, what am I going to do? Like, put it on a shelf? I don't know.
well,
it's
yeah.
just...
Put in a little shadow
I
box.
don't
You
have,
got a bunch
like,
of
all
other
the
shit on
wall.
your shelves you don't play.
You
Not
don't
video
play,
games.
You don't play Funko Pops, but you can.
I do
Coming out later this
all
year
the time.
with Gears Pop. Huh? Nailed
They
it.
should probably give us money for that.
Yeah, they should.
Is that the pop logo?
Yeah.
Um,
Pretty good, huh?
Yeah, well,
Chuck, you've been
That's
playing
my
a lot more.
Caliendo.
spot on.
You've been playing a lot more Fallout Shelter since it was released on other platforms.
I have, yeah.
They're a little bit in the news right now because Bethesda is suing Warner Brothers for their Westworld mobile game, which is literally just Fallout Shelter.
Warner Bros. Clapped back at Bethesda hard.
They did, but they also threw their own developer under the bus when they did so.
I mean, it's the same fucking game.
It's the same game, and
Well,
the
it's a lot-
developer...
the developers, yeah.
Yeah, it was NT
responsible for
Creates,
the-
I think, or something like
something
that.
like that. They use the same code. It's
Yeah.
the same code.
The developer who helped create Fallout Shelter then went to work with WB to make the Westworld game. And
WB basically, in their first response, were like, "Who the fuck is Bethesda?"
Oh my god, what a bunch of dummies.
But
That's paraphrasing, but still.
well,
would
like
be
my favorite
great.
part of the story is how they recognized their code in that game. Is apparently there's a bug in the final product of the Westworld game that was a very well-known bug in the development of Fallout Shelter that was patched before it was released. And so basically meaning that they took their original source code before they stopped working on Fallout and then just ported it over to Westworld instead, which is really hilarious. I don't know what comes of this story.
That's some Westworld type shit,
It
man.
really kind of is a little bit. Little meta, little
Last time I heard source code was in Westworld.
Lil Meta, is
That's
that
been
your
updated.
favorite like rapper, Josh?
it's just new bundles.
Gotcha.
Oh,
It's
What?
new bundles.
oh, new bundles.
New
is-
Bundles is my favorite rapper, yes. It's with a Z
Oh, well, yeah, well, that's a given.
and no
How do
U.
you spell new with a Z?
News.
Got it. Oh, is
That's-
that
that's
Huey Lewis.
Huey Lewis's rap name.
It's news for a current generation.
Yeah, it's deaf rapping. The B square.
Don't do that.
I
Yeah,
would
that
do
is that is your Lou Ferrigno voice only, sir.
I mean,
You
tell
can-
me that's not spot on.
Alright,
That's my Caliendo.
It's probably true.
Remember that deaf girl on Facts of Life?
Go on.
I do.
all
That's
I-
it, huh?
That's all I got.
All right.
Telltale is making a new engine
15
finally.
years later.
Time to retire that bad boy. Walking Dead Season 3 is the last game that will have
To
it.
be fair, the games don't look terrible, and they've ran better since the this generation came out. The
Yeah,
hardware
they
runs
have.
it better, but
They could look better, but they
and
don't
they're
look
still
bad. They,
they
have a
don't look
style.
bad, and they're still a bit janky, not terrible. On 360 and PS3, they were quite janky.
Yes. They still have their problems. The last what was the last Telltale? I played episode
Don't speak
1
to me
of
about
Batman.
Telltale.
Season 2. It had its moments still.
The
But-
problems?
I still had
Oh,
some
I didn't
stutters
have
and some
any
audio problems and
Problems
things
with
like that.
Batman in the past
I
couple
have
of
some
times.
frame rate dips and stuff like that, but that's about it. Nothing too terrible. But I mean, they do need a new engine. It's been a really long time, and they've made a fuck ton of money.
Yeah, I saw a minute ago. Apparently, there was a trailer or a teaser for season 3 of Walking Dead. Did you watch that? It came out today.
Yeah, I mean that's the second one.
Yeah.
They, I mean it comes out next month. I'm stoked.
Yeah. I mean, do you think they finished that in full by the end of this year? They have been better about their release schedule. I
They
will
have,
say
but
that.
it won't come out that fast.
They have been with Batman.
Batman came out real fast.
It was what, once a month, right? They
Yeah,
actually
they
did it?
didn't. They don't fuck around with Batman.
Well, that
But
game
I
was-
guess it does pretty well.
The whole season was made before they released episode 1 on that. Walking Dead is not so. That I'm aware of, at least.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think it would be smart for them to get one out per month, but we will indeed.
It'd be great if if that
Yep.
ended as a 2018 game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See.
Yeah. See, moving on here. We finally got a little bit of news about Amy Hennig after everything that happened with their Star Wars game at EA.
She making VR shit.
She no longer with EA and hasn't been since January. They just didn't talk about it. She's created a new independent studio and was wanting to focus more on
She's making indie games.
indie games and VR stuff. Yeah, but it's interesting to hear that EA decided to not really release that information and just say we're pivoting the game to our new Vancouver studio and not
Pivot.
really say anything about the fact that she no longer stayed with the company.
You know she wanted out of there. She was
yeah,
like,
I mean
fuck
they've
this shit.
fucked up Star Wars.
Do you think
in
they gave
terms
her
of
the
the
Bobby
game license.
Bonilla?
One Piazza.
I do love that show. I don't know. I'm excited to see what she does. I'm sad that she's not going to have like a bigger budget because her games, like Uncharted 2, was fantastic.
All she has to do is make one amazing indie game, and then she'll get all the money she needs.
Yeah, I mean, man, her kind of rise and fall from grace.
It's gone poorly for her.
I don't think it's
And
going to fall
VR
from
is
grace for her.
probably not the way
What?
to go.
I mean, she's not. She wasn't the problem with that game. It was like EA.
It doesn't matter. Look where she is now.
Well, a lot of
compared to
people
what she was
associate
at.
her with a failed Star Wars game now.
I get that, but she has cachet in her name still.
In the business, into the layman, a lot of people kind of associate her with she fucked up a Star Wars
I
game.
haven't seen anybody link those two.
I would
Evan
totally
just did.
agree with that.
And
what
so
Evan
did
said.
Trey. That's two people.
Well, you're the first two. Like, I mean, legit. Like, I've
I'm
not
in the
heard
middle.
anybody who knows of it. Huh? You're
I'm
in the middle.
He's
yeah.
Malcolm.
Moni.
Look, you're
I thought we
about
were going to do the
punch
gear
him.
shift.
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So
So
wait,
anyway,
I'm the gear.
I don't know. I'm excited to see what she does. I don't at all blame her for the visceral stuff. That was EA horribly mismanaging it. CD Projekt Red came out and basically said that there will be, or not CD Projekt. Yeah, CD Projekt Red. Sorry. For some reason, I
They
conflated
did.
that with Cyberpunk in my head. Thought I said the wrong thing, but I was right.
Well, they still made The Witcher too.
I know. Sorry, developer. I thought I had conflated the game name in
also,
the studio. Well,
Number
they
two?
also made The Witcher 2 and 3.
Oh,
I see what you're doing there. Okay.
that's two. That's two. Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of The Witcher, there will be more games in that universe, but the trilogy of games, which it was intended to be,
Not a
is
Witcher
closed.
4.
Not a Witcher 4, potentially not starring Geralt.
Probably not.
Um,
From the way I read it, it seemed like
Ciri is probably who they're going to focus on.
I don't know. I've never played
But
Witcher,
Yennefer
but
or Jessica
Just
or
stop.
I would
stop it.
I would definitely play a
Yenny.
game that was solely starring Ciri, Yennefer, and Triss. 100%.
Just drips douche.
Jan. Is that John? Jan? Jonas?
Well, this
Each
went
one.
about as well as I thought. This is why I didn't include the story initially.
Well, it makes sense.
That game sucks at naming people. Let's be honest.
I do hate it.
Polish, bro.
I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, Polish. Known for their good ideas.
Sausage.
Pretty good idea.
I was thinking about the submarine with the screen door.
Yeah.
Man, those jokes are so bad.
Bit leaky.
Those jokes are so fucking bad.
I like them.
What else do we got here? We only got really one more story, and it's probably the biggest one. Google
Yeah.
is apparently in the process of trying to make a video game console.
Are they though?
That's what
No, I think
I'm not
they are.
100%
Because
sure.
like Apple has been at one point, and
Apple doesn't understand games. though.
Apple
Like,
was-
Steve Jobs hated the idea of video games. He didn't want it to be on the
Well, yeah,
Apple
iOS
was,
he's
but
been
people-
gone for a while. It turns
Apple
out.
I
was
know,
making their Apple TV and the limited game functionality that it has, but that's all they ever were doing.
I'm just
was
saying.
what- but that's what the reports were. I
Steve
truly,
Jobs nowadays into zombie games.
it's fair. I truly believe Google's making this mainly because there are big time
Who's a big fan of
reporters
that Dragon
from big time websites. Kotaku was put out a big long thing about this. I don't know if you guys read it. It was very long.
I read some of
No,
the stuff. Yeah,
They have like firsthand sources and that have heard from people in the know that are working on that have taken meetings at Google for this. It's a ways off. This is probably going to be if it came out, my guess would be probably the first to market on a streaming console.
Yeah,
yeah.
that sounds
So
about right.
the article listed 3 pillars of what they're trying to do, and I love it because it's the most generic fucking thing of all time.
The
It was-
explanation made them make sense. Though.
Yeah, but like the 3 pillars I listed were some sort of streaming platform, some sort of hardware, and then games.
If you
an essential pillar to the video game.
when you say yes, and when you say it out of context, it sounds ridiculous. If you
Yes.
read the article, that makes a lot of sense. Though the fact that they're saying it is a futuristic style console of much like what Microsoft talked about on their stage. Eventually,
Right.
we're going to an all streaming. You'll have upgradable like hardware you buy that isn't like for putting disc in. You have something basically that's a streaming box
it's like
Yeah.
your phone.
that also allows you to have a controller that you buy from a certain company. And then they want, and not just games, they want to go heavy into either creating their own game studios to make high quality
This is
games,
the
they
part that
said,
worries me.
or buying up other major studios.
Yeah, and the reason that worries me is because no one's off the table.
I think this
Google
is-
has money for anybody.
More than any other of these people making,
Yeah.
including Microsoft, they are. I would bet money that this is happening.
and
Whether it succeeds or not, I don't know.
it's the last thing I want is Google to come in and suddenly like they've purchased Ubisoft, right? Like they could rather
Take
than
that,
doing
Vivendi.
yeah, right. They could just bypass all of what
Aw.
Vivendi was doing and fucking purchase Ubisoft.
We
or
tried
purchase,
so hard.
or purchase
It
EA.
took
Or
forever, guys.
they've got like the pure definition of fuck you money. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah, they're the axe cap of video games.
They are
X,
indeed.
run.
God, now if Axe Cap made a video game console,
I'm okay with.
He
he
There's
sounds like a character
Starring
from a
Dollar
Sega
Bill.
Genesis game in the 80s.
well,
Yep. They just bring him
okay.
back. Sega brought to you by Google.
You know what? I actually could see them buying Sega and then releasing it under that name.
There is room for another console, especially as we enter a new phase of consoles.
Yep.
If you have your own first-party games, I'd like, because Rob had his video about this, and he has some good points. And for the most part, it's what you would expect from Rob on a streaming console, because Rob's very against. It's not his bag. So it took him he was very objective, and then by the end, he's like, I don't fucking want streaming, basically. Which I laughed. I was like, in my head, I was like, Rob, you lasted 15 minutes. You did so good. Then basically, and he totally admits in the video, he's just like, I'm biased. I fucking hate it. But
I want that video to be, I haven't watched it yet, but I want that video to be just him, like, talking, like, looking at the camera the entire time.
Want it.
And then, like, just slowly, like, talking and, like, turning his head and trailing off and, like, going silent and for, like, 5 seconds saying nothing. And then busting out, I don't fucking want this!
Because if it can get all the third-party games that the others are getting, and then you put out high-quality first-party games, that's what a console does. For Sony, they have great first-party games, and that's why I own a Sony system, because I prefer my Xbox, so all my third-party games are played on Xbox for the most part, but I still own a PlayStation because they have great first-party games. So there's always room for another console, as long as they are giving something that the other consoles are not.
I just don't want them to take away from the existence. Like, that's the problem.
It's no different than what Microsoft's trying to do right now.
Yeah.
And Sony did.
And I get that, but they're not taking, like Ninja Theory is a great developer, but they're not a big 5 developer. Like, you know, Google, in order to make an actual splash and do this, they would have to get somebody that big. Like, they would have to go out there and get a Bethesda or an EA or a Ubisoft or something like that. And, like, I just think walling off that
I
to
disagree.
an exclusive...
Years away, I mean, if you're in-house and you go out and get
or
people...
Insomniac.
Or if you go get people and then you put out a badass game... I mean, 343 wasn't a thing, and now they're doing good things. Bungie wasn't a thing. They're doing good things. You know, I mean, Halo hit, and Bungie had never really been...
Bungie had been around on the PC side, but not console side.
Yeah, most people didn't know who Bungie was, and then they made Halo, and they were almost a household name. I mean, all it takes is buying the people and going and making a badass game. You make a killer app, basically, which is what Halo was, which is the only reason Microsoft still exists.
Sign Ken Levine.
There you go.
Yeah.
Or Adam Levine, and it's just a Maroon 5 streaming machine.
Or the Levine twins. I mean, they're brothers, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
They have the same last name.
One of them got a little bit more lucky with those genes than the other.
I think that this is happening, and I think this is not a bad thing.
I just worry about the infrastructure.
Could it be a bad thing? Sure, but
I'm over here fucking hampered with shitty Comcast service, and the idea of streaming a game entirely, I don't want to do.
Well, that was another thing. Is Google is leading the way in like these off-site farms, and basically because Microsoft is currently also doing this. It's kind of what they've tried to do, like with a crackdown this time, but aren't far enough along to ever actually be able to do it. Basically, I could play on the highest quality, graphic game. I could play Last of Us 2 that's coming out on a $100 Chromebook, and it run completely fine because it goes from where you're streaming the game, it hits a third party, let's say, server farm that renders every bit of your graphics with this new program they're running, and it comes to you basically in a complete file where your system's not rendering the graphics off itself. So therefore, you're streaming just as good a quality graphics on a cheaper device.
Yeah, the graphics is not a problem, but you're still relying on internet connectivity for.
And they say that. That's all. They're also the company running Google Fiber, which has had some roadblocks, but
a lot of roadblocks, unfortunately. Comcast in the devil in general, like they are just putting blocks up as much as they can. Within the legal infrastructure.
But
I hope streaming becomes a viable.
But I mean, let's also look at the fact Microsoft wanted, and if they had their way, we would have online DRM now. So I mean, and that's a thing. It sucks there are several parts of America that are rural, but they're not losing a lot of money off that. That's bad PR to say that. But most of America
to be fair, you're right, because that's where GameStop makes all their money.
But most of America can play their game, and you sell a streaming console that can do it. Until we're hit because of no net neutrality, and we get some big fees or something, and there's data caps, then that's in trouble. But
I also wonder if the streaming platform has to come first. Instead of internet for everyone, and then we add a streaming service.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if there's a streaming service that is in such high demand
that we build
enough people that eventually, I mean, because it's essentially not just like a business reason that we don't have fast internet everywhere. It's a political issue.
Yeah.
And political issues don't get fixed unless for a long time people yell about it.
People yell about it, or enough money becomes involved, and most likely the second one.
There's an infrastructure thing there too. I mean, a lot of people live out in the sticks, can't get faster internet.
There are.
because
That
of
was
satellites.
that was the point
Yeah,
of
but
Google
that's what I was-
Yeah.
Fiber, but they're getting roadblocked from like Comcast
That's
and
fair.
Charter and all
Right.
Why
that.
don't you have E EPB?
They literally, the cutoff is like, Eric lives a mile down the road from me, and he has it, and I can't get it.
You need a big fucking extension cord.
I know, right?
Treasure man.
You just want
I
to
got
cover the
this.
country in cords, man. Do you know how much watching we'd have to do?
That's a lot of watching.
I'm bad with just these cords.
Stay vigilant, guys.
That's going to wrap it up for the news portion of our show tonight. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you stay tuned for our next show, which is going to be all the games we've been playing, and there's a lot of them, so fucking buckle up.